Hi, good evening. Thank you for coming into my webinar. I think we've still got a few people popping in. I can see that people are still joining, so hopefully you've still got a couple of minutes to get everybody in and settled, and hopefully you can see and hear me, which is quite important. I will go through some, I'll let people get in. I can see that people are still coming. So I'll go through some of the housekeeping and then the agenda when we've got a few more people in. Because I think I've got 3 different clocks around me and they're all saying slightly different times. So I think to be safe, we've probably got about another 2.5 minutes before it's definitely 1/2 past, even though some of the things around me are saying it is. I think we'll probably just go for another couple of minutes and let people keep coming in. So I can see them coming now. So I'll just say to anybody, there is a chat box, which hopefully you can see, and hopefully that will enable you to hi, Sandy. Ask questions as we go, and I will get distracted, and you'll be like, oh, what's she doing? And I'll be just saying hello. But the chat box will be saved. So if you do put anything in anything, oh, she's not answered me, the chat box does get saved. Oh, thank you, Mickey. That's amazing. The technology's working. And also, anybody who has sent me an individual email with a specific question, there just is not the time to go through it in the 30 minutes because I've got obviously quite a lot that I can say on this subject, but I will get your individual responses to you. So let's just see how people are doing. We've still got a few to come, but the clocks around me are now nearly all at 1/2 past. So I think to be safe and keep on where we are with the timings, I think we better get started. So I'm just going to pop the chat box away for a minute. As I say, I will see your messages and I will get back to them. I will get slightly distracted if I'm going back and forth to the messages. So a lot of you know me, a lot of you don't, which is fantastic. So just a bit of an introduction. So I'm Louise Messier. I am a nutritional therapist. I'm recently an award-winning author with my first book that came out last year, and I'm a food writer, which is something I'm trying to get more and more into because it's a way of me spreading my message, which I'm very keen to do. So what we're going to do today is webinar overview of Kickstart Your Health, January. So all I'm seeing, the reason why I'm doing this, New Year's resolutions and diets. I'm not a fan of them, as you will get to see why as we go through the session. So I wanted to actually in this webinar say, why am I talking about diets and what does a diet mean instead of healthy eating and basically just eating. We're going to look at the other elements of health, which are absolutely crucial for effective weight loss, because a lot of the time people just think of food, but there's so much more to health, but also weight than just the food that we actually eat. So we're going to look a really quick whistle-stop tour into actually the other elements that are important to us as well. There will be opportunities for Q&A. As I say, I'll keep opening the chat box and just checking in on there, but I won't be too heads up on getting back to people because I'm very easily distracted and I will lose and I'll be here all night. So I will get back to you on those unless they are desperately urgent during the session. There is an offer at the end of the webinar. I can help you further, but obviously that is not essential to this webinar. It's just an offer at the end, so stay with me till the end and you will get that offer. And don't worry about frantically, furiously scribbling away because there's handouts during the webinar. Hopefully they'll come through to you because they're all uploaded, and you'll also get a follow-up email with an actual recording. And if anybody's really interested, you can also have the PowerPoint presentation. So there is no need at all to be scribbling away furiously. There's still a few people coming in, but that's fine. We'll just keep going and they can join us as they come. So moving on, I'm going to try and do something technical, so do bear with me. This is my first webinar. Before we get going, I want to actually find out how people in the group here tonight actually feel about dieting. And I'm going to attempt to give you all a poll. So, how has dieting made you feel? I am now distributing a poll. You are only able to answer one of the 4 options. And I just want to collect those responses and have a look at how we're actually, as a group, what our approach to dieting actually is. So let's have a look at those coming in and see what they look like. They're coming in. They're coming in. That's good. So let's have a look. Okay. So it's complete, you've all voted, so let's see. Now, so 50% of you felt demotivated and 50% felt healthier in the short term. Which is interesting because that's really good because it actually fits in with my whole theme. If everybody had said we felt brilliant and really healthy, that would have kind of, not been great for the way this conversation is going to go. But thankfully, it's you all felt the way that I hoped it would go. So demotivated and healthier in the short term, and that's exactly why I'm against them. And we'll see more about the biology of why I'm against them as we go through. So just moving on. Dieting in the diet is basically, the dictionary definition of diet is basically the food that we eat, but dieting has become known more as a restricted calories, a form of eating, a short-term way of eating, very strange way of eating in some cases. So I'm taking a slightly extreme view with this visual here. What I think of and what I associate with dieting, and this is the real sort of the negative connotations of dieting, when I see these sorts of diet foods in particular, so low fat, etc., I see the things that jump out at me are the things that are quite negative, not just for weight loss, but for overall health. So this is an extreme view, as I say. There are some diets that's better than others, but some of the diets that are product-led and diet drinks and things like that, they're full of some quite confusing ingredients to our bodies. So they're quite confusing metabolically. We don't know what to do with them. We cannot metabolize them as food. We cannot metabolize them as energy. There's no nutrients in them, so they're not giving us anything. And some of the ingredients are actually quite confusing because they're actually not food. Artificial sweeteners and e-numbers, they're designed in laboratories. Yes, they have a purpose in some way. You could argue that they have a purpose in making sure that food lasts a lot longer, enables us to have food taken from a freezer, popped into a microwave and eaten within 3 minutes. They enable us to do that, but do we really want to? Are they actually very good for us when we do that? So a lot of the diet foods, let's be honest, they're quite unpalatable if they aren't chemically enhanced. So the reason why diet food is being picked on, I mean, I could pick on processed food in general, but the reason why I'm picking on diet food for this is that the food itself is quite bland and quite unpalatable. So the e-numbers, the artificial sweeteners and the sugar that go into them, and basically to make them taste of something. There are some really bad examples, and I have put some named things up here. Please don't sue me. It's just as an example. There are many others, that are often sort of promoted as you can have as much of this as you like because it's only this many calories, or it's this much fiber, or you can have this much of this because it's low fat, etc. It is not doing anything for your health, regardless of how much of it you can have. So my approach to food is very much a different approach in terms of what nutritional value do I get from this food and what does it do for me? Because as you'll see as we go through, the body is much more complicated than just the food that goes in and what we do with it. There's a lot more that goes into our weight and our health. And so when I look at food, it's very much as a holistic approach. So the next area here is a healthy, balanced approach to food. So there's no chemicals. The only food I say to people that I don't want you to ever have, and I'm generally very balanced, and so you can enjoy cake, you can enjoy wine, of course you can, there's no restrictions. The thing that I'm against is processed food. So the thing I'm against is e-numbers, the artificial sweeteners, the sugar. Yes, sugar, we know what to do with it, but it's sugar where it's in things that we don't know it is. And that's where it's sneaky because it's in savory foods, it's in foods for children, it's in diet products, it's in where you don't expect it to be. And so that's where it becomes more of a problem. So I just popped the chat box up again. See, I told you I'd get easily distracted. So my approach to healthy eating and real food is actually we're not eliminating anything other than rubbish. So you're allowed carbs. Of course you're allowed carbs. When people go carb free, it's actually quite damaging for the body because we are designed to take in all of the macronutrients. So that is carbs, proteins, and fats. And fats are another thing that I will talk about because we can eat them. They're not the bad guy. So on this visual here, you will see a massive lump of cheese. Cheese is fat, yes, but it's food. And the problem with food is we know what to do with it. The body can take the nutrients, it can take the energy, it can take all of the vitamins and minerals, and it knows what to do with it. And yes, it's a high fat product. So Sorry, I just had a message about slides. Can everybody see the slides? Because I am not sure. Somebody's just said that they can't. Oh no, no, you're all not seeing slides. Hang on. There we go. Are you now seeing slides? Yes? Are we now seeing slides? Oh yes, marvellous. Perfect. I know I said I'd not be looking in the chat box too much, but I've now looked and seen lots of messages. So now that we are seeing the visuals, it will make a lot more sense as to what I'm actually talking about. You'll be thinking, what's she rabbiting on about? So what I was talking about here on the diet side, the things that I just quickly scribbled over, this isn't how it looked, I did just scribble on it over here, were these bad guys. And then over here, in this visual on the healthy eating side, is all of the foods that we are allowed. And there is coffee, there is alcohol, there is cheese, as I've said, and there is pasta. So it's all of the food groups. It's all about moderation. I will talk more about actual weight loss because I know you'll be thinking, yeah, but that's great, but I still need to lose weight. We will come to that. The thing at the middle of this one here is your gut microbiome. And I'm going to talk a lot about your gut microbiome because it is of complete utmost importance in all of our health, but also with weight. So if you are struggling to lose weight, if you are holding particularly abdominal fat, and if you are thinking, well, I eat healthy, I exercise, and yet I don't seem to be able to shift this, the answer is probably going to lie in your gut. And so that's the reason why I will keep talking about it. But on the diet side over here, on the negative side, all of these E numbers, all of this sugar, all of this artificial sweeteners is all quite damaging, well, very damaging to our microbiome. And so all of those good guys in there that do all of the work in terms of metabolizing the fat, getting the energy around the body, getting the nutrients around, etc. You're not helping them by having these foods. It's fueling the bad guys who are lazy and don't really do anything. So your gut flora is going to be less diverse than a healthy gut flora. And there's lots of health conditions linked with our gut microbiome. More and more research is coming out now as to our gut microbiome and how influential it is to our overall health. Yes, it's involved in weight loss. It is completely involved, and we'll look at a little bit why later, but it's involved in our overall health. If you're trying for a baby, it's important to look after your microbiome because the microbiome passes to the baby. It's important if you, obviously IBS is huge, but is it really IBS or is it just something that's not quite right in your gut flora? So there's lots of things that we can do to help it, and there's lots of things we can do to harm it. And unfortunately, these foods over here on the diet side are harmful, and particularly harmful to our microbiome, which is why on the over here on the healthy eating side, everything is allowed, because in nature everything has a role to play with the body. So cheese, yes, it's high fat, but it's got calcium, it's got protein, it's got milk sugars, it's got things that we can actually digest and use as food. So there's nothing that's not allowed apart from rubbish. And if we go back 40 years, that's probably, you know, where we need to be looking at with a clean eating diet, because in the last 40, 30 years, our diet's changed considerably and our food landscape is unrecognisable to whatever it was before, and it's only going to get worse. And so all these chemicals, all these E numbers, all these sugars and sweeteners, it's going to come more and more into our food supply. So we need to be more and more aware of how we eat, and how we eat not only for our weight, and dieting is not going to help with our weight, as we'll see, but also just for our general health. So now that you can all see the slides, which is, oh, I haven't removed the scribbles that I was practicing on, so let's just get rid of those scribbles. When we look at health, and when we think about health and weight, we need to look at a holistic view. And so one of your handouts that you are going to get is this health triangle. And the health triangle is looking at all of the areas of our health that are relevant. So I've put it into the triangle. There are many ways that you could do it. There's ways of, you know, looking at pillars of health and all sorts of different ways. Basically, as long as you are not just thinking about the food that you eat, that's the most important thing, because there's so much more to our health, our weight, our lifestyle than the food that we actually eat. So I've put it into physical, social, and our mental and emotional health and well-being. We're spending more time now thinking about our mental health and emotional well-being than I think we have before, but we've also got to a point where it's actually quite bad. So our mental health and anxiety and stress and all sorts of, you know, those sorts of conditions, and they affect sleep and they affect immunity. All of that's on the increase, and that's a lot to do with this social side, which is why we also have a social side over here. The physical is easier because people tend to recognize the physical symptoms a bit more. They know that the food they eat has a bearing. To what degrees is mixed, but people tend to know that if they eat certain foods, it's going to do this for them and that for them. And if they don't sleep, it might make them tired and things like that. The things that we don't know as much about are the impact on the holistic picture. We tend to look at things in isolation. And so when I look at things with people, it's very much everything all together. There's lots of crossover between the three areas. There's nothing that we can do in isolation that wouldn't have an effect on something else. So the food we eat affects our physical well-being, but it hugely affects our mood and our mental health and our mental well-being as well. And diets, I keep coming back to diets, obviously this webinar is all about diets, are quite detrimental to all three. The reason why diets are detrimental to all three and why I wanted to highlight that in this context of this triangle is the physical side, all those weird ingredients, all those artificial things, they're detrimental to our physical well-being because they affect our gut microbiome. They can also do things to our skin. There's not a lot of nutrients in diet foods, and so a lot of the time what we're having is people who are eating but not nourishing themselves, so that they're malnourished, they're not getting enough vitamins and minerals, they're counting calories, but they're not concentrating on nutrients. And that can have lots of physical sort of manifestations as well, small and then gradually bigger. So it depends how long, obviously, you keep the diet and that way of eating up for. Obviously, gut microbiome, sleep is affected by those weird ingredients as well, because they are artificially altering the way the body deals with food. The body deals with food by making sort of our mood. So food creates our mood. When we artificially alter that with weird food that isn't really food, it artificially alters our mood, and that goes against the body's natural rhythms. Diets affect our mental and emotional health as well. Diets can be quite stressful. So there's often a lot of pressure put on yourself with a diet, or for yourself, or by somebody else, by a trainer or by a group or by somebody who set you a plan, and it can be quite stressful. And you can feel like you're sort of putting all this pressure on yourself, and then you're standing on the scales and it's not quite where you want it to be, and so then you're feeling low self-esteem because it's not what you wanted, and then you're feeling guilty. And then you have this weird guilt relationship with food, which is not what I want anyone to be, because food is nourishment. It's not to be hated, it's not to be feared, it's not to feel scared of it, it's not to feel, like you have this horrible relationship where you don't like eating. That's not a good place to be. And it can also affect our social side. So many people are often in a situation where there's an option to go out for dinner with friends, and you're thinking, well, I don't know what the menu's going to be, I don't know if I'll be able to eat anything, and that's not a nice place to be either, because then you're potentially missing out on things because you're thinking, well, I don't want to go because I might not be able to eat anything, and I don't want to be the only one eating a salad and having questions, or I don't want people to know I'm on a diet, so I'm just not going to go. And that's quite sad when people feel that way as well, because you're eliminating you're cutting yourself off from friendships as well. So I was trying to open the chat box and once again got confused. So if anybody is asking questions, I actually can't see them at the moment because I've hidden them out of view. So I need to try to find them discreetly and get them back when I can. So quickly, some statistics on diets and weight loss. Most of us know that 90% of people on a diet will fail because been on and off them, and that's what happens. When people are on and off them for a long time, we tend to call it yo-yo dieting, because it's like you're on and you're off and you're up and you're down, etc. What some people don't know, or what people don't realise, is this one here. Excuse my erratic drawing, especially Mickey. Just don't even look, because Mickey will just be cringing at that. The diet industry is based on a repeat customer model, and they are not shy about this. And they do not pretend that it isn't. So they're based on repeat customers, and make of that what you will. They're saying they don't work, and they know that people will be coming back, and they're quite open on that. And to be fair play to them, they make a lot of money from that, But I, for one, would not be wanting to be part of an industry where they're almost setting you up to fail, where they know you're going to fail, because it is not going to work long term. The other thing with diets is when you lose weight on diet, you might not lose body fat. You might lose lean tissue, especially if you lose it quickly, and that's possibly just water. So you're not really measuring what you're losing, especially when you're losing it quickly. And restricting calories can make your metabolism slower. And that's what we see with people who yo-yo diet, is that actually they've got quite a sluggish metabolism. And the reason for that is that when you restrict calories, there's some difference in sort of intermittent fasting and, proper scheduled fasting where you do it properly, and I will answer any individual questions on that by email. But simply restricting calories for the sake of I'm not going to eat now because I think I'm being good if I miss lunch or whatever, your body gets confused and it doesn't recognize the difference between you choosing not to eat and you not being able to eat. It thinks you're starving. So why that slows your metabolism down is basically because it slows everything down. So your brain thinks it's being really kind to you because it thinks, oh, there's no food. I'll slow everything down to save her energy. And that means that your thoughts gets fuzzy because your brain isn't getting as much energy. So your brain's like shutting down a little bit and just getting a bit sleepy. So you can't really make decisions. You can't really think clearly. If you've ever been on diet and you're just like really confused, it makes your movement slower. So you're quite sluggish. Sometimes it can be quite clumsy, because you're not as coordinated, because there's not as much sort of energy and mitochondria getting around the body to actually make those movements. And it slows your actual body systems down as well. So it can slow your metabolism down, making everything much harder long term, because what that means is you actually store more fat, because fat to the body is quite precious. So it's very counterproductive to actually to cut calories in that way. I need to remove my scribble from there. There we go. So people gain weight when they finish a diet for a few reasons. One is the main reason is that you've been overly restrictive. So as soon as you finish, it's like, hey, I finished, I can have this because I finished my diet now. Again, counterproductive. And a diet is meant to be something you can do for all of your life. And that is why I don't eliminate food that makes you happy. And once you get over the rubbish that's in processed food, you'll realize that doesn't make you happy, and so you won't miss that. So I'm not advocating anybody miss out on anything that they enjoy or that is worthwhile eating. Cake, prosecco, cheese, whatever makes you happy in moderation, because you can't go without the rest of your life. If it makes you happy, it's just not fair. But when you tell yourself that you can't have it, you want it more. Whether or not you do want it more, or just because you can't have it, you think you want it more. Either way, it affects your mood. It can make you grumpy. It can make you think, well, I can't have that. And you don't want to be grumpy. And it can also affect your mental health, because constantly restricting yourself and constantly feeling like you can't have something is clearly not a good place to be. It's not healthy to feel that you're constantly missing out on something, because you start to feel, either isolated, as I said before, on the social side, or that you will not, people have this feeling of guilt and self-esteem and not feeling worthy, and all those sorts of things that come from this way of eating, and it is not healthy. The other big thing is that the scales lie. So hide your scales and get rid of the scales. Scales are not your friend. I'm always telling my clients to not stand on the scales, because they will not tell you what's really happening in your body. So if you are there every day, standing on there thinking, I've lost a pound, but I've gained it again the next day, or I've lost 3 pounds this week, I must have been really good. And then the next week you think, well, I've done loads of exercise this week, why have I not lost any weight? It's because the scales don't recognize that your body might be changing. So if you're gaining muscle, losing body fat, it's exactly what we want you to do, but the scales won't recognize that as a total body weight. So you might be standing there and thinking, I've put weight on, whereas actually you've lost body fat. So that's what we want. So get rid of the scales and just try a tape measure instead, because it's much more reflective of what's actually happening in your body. And diet foods, as I said earlier, are not good for your overall health, not just for weight loss. They're very contradictory when it comes to weight loss. They don't really help you, but they're also not good for your overall health. So let's move on. So what do we want to do for effective weight loss? That's obviously what this is all about. How do we move forward? It's all well and good saying this doesn't work, but what does work? There is no miracle cure. There is no one, this is going to be it. I'm the woman for this miracle diet. There isn't anything. What we do need to have, though, is that holistic approach to life and health. Now, whether you choose going forward to use the health triangle that I talked you through, or adopt a different approach, as long as you consider your whole lifestyle. So what you eat, how much you move, how much you sleep, how much you relax, how much you do things that you enjoy, and you put time in to do those things, that will give you that holistic picture of health, which will help you lose weight. The best thing to do when it comes to losing weight is not to overly focus on losing weight, because the more you focus on it, the more pressure you put on yourself, the more stressed you become, the more cortisol you produce because you're stressed, and then the more abdominal fat you will store, because the more stressed you are, the more cortisol you produce, and cortisol increases abdominal fat. So when we look at a holistic approach and we are relaxed and we're thinking, you know, we're doing this and we're eating this and we're happier and we're relaxed, the weight loss will happen. When you think, oh, I haven't lost a pound this week, I need to not eat this, I need to do this, then the more pressure, the more cortisol, the more abdominal fat. And abdominal fat is the hardest fat to lose. Unfortunately, it's very stubborn fat, and it's also the most dangerous fat. So when we look at sort of body composition and where is the fat located on the body, this is the area, the visceral area, where we don't want to see it, because obviously if you consider where all of your important organs are, that's where we don't want the fat to be. It's much healthier to have a fatter bum and thighs than it is on your tummy, but we can't choose where we have the fat, unfortunately. You can do a bit if you do weight training, you can kind of target areas, but the fat will go where it wants to go. But being stressed will definitely put it on your tummy. So moving forward is definitely ditching those processed things. I know I keep saying it, but it is probably the most important thing. Processed foods, anything labelled like, look at the ingredients. If it's full of stuff you don't recognise, don't go near it. Hide your scales and use a tape measure, most definitely. And eating real food. Now, for some people, when I meet with them, this is quite confusing, because I say eat food even if it's high fat. A lot of people have been on diets where they haven't been allowed avocados, and so they haven't been allowed fruit like a mango or something. You may take some attitude shifting to start to look at food differently. But once you do, and once you understand the body and how it uses the food and how that will help with weight loss, you understand why it's good to do that. We actually do need to eat fat to be able to metabolize fat. So anything like an avocado or a piece of fish or some nuts and things like that is actually very good for us to actually help us to lose weight. The fat that we don't need comes back to the processed foods, and that's the trans fats, that's the artificial fats, and they're the things that really clog up the body, because they're the ones we can't metabolize. So they do just sit around the body. So processed foods, margarine, biscuits, cakes, pastries, crisps, diet foods, unfortunately, all of those things actually help that fat to just sit in the body because it can't be used as energy. So I need to be really quick because I can really talk on this subject and I've just noticed the time. So really quickly, Mickey, there's your brain that you drew. Mickey, he's one of the participants, did all the designs on my book, and that is the brain that she hated drawing. So there is the brain. So everything we eat and drink affects our health, our mood, and our behavior. Biggest thing to take away from this is that all of it is connected and interlinked. We cannot just think about food alone. At the core of it all is our gut. And I know I keep talking about our gut. So quickly, why I'm talking about the gut when it comes to weight loss. Our gut, lovely diagram here, regulates our blood sugar levels. Our blood sugar levels, if they are going up and down and up and down and up and down, we're going to likely be eating the wrong foods, because our blood sugar should be stable. That comes back to eating real foods. It stabilizes it. Food manufacturers know how to increase your hunger hormone and suppress your feeling full hormone. And they know how to do that with certain foods. If you feel you can eat a whole packet of biscuits and then think, where did that go? The manufacturers know what they're doing with that, and you don't feel like you're managing that. You don't feel like you're feeling satisfied from what you're eating. If we eat the right foods, our gut will help us to feel full when we're full and know when we're full. Your gut also regulates your cravings. So I can help people just stop being addicted to sugar. Just come on, you don't need sugar. Yes, you can have it as a treat, but you don't need to be ruled by it. Your gut is in control of that. So fix the gut, fix the sugar. Your gut regulates your mood as well. So if you're an emotional eater and you eat when you're tired or stressed or anxious or sad, if your mood's up and down, your food's going to be up and down. So managing the gut naturally and managing the neurotransmitters naturally is going to help to manage the mood naturally. I know I keep saying that, but it's very important that we do that naturally. Our gut is also really influential in managing stress and sleep. If we don't sleep well, we eat more. If we don't sleep well, our hunger hormone is increased the next day. And ghrelin, the hunger hormone, tends to make you want high carb and high fat and high sugary foods. So if you don't sleep well, it becomes a cycle. And that cycle can last for years, with some people weeks, months, with others. And it's often linked with stress. So again, if you're more stressed, more cortisol, not sleeping, more ghrelin. It becomes a vicious circle. So with weight loss, there are 3 hormones, and I've mentioned ghrelin and leptin. Ghrelin makes you feel hungry, leptin makes you feel full, and insulin. Obviously, we can't ignore insulin because of type 2 diabetes and metabolic disorder, and I don't have time, unfortunately, to go into that in too much detail, but blood sugar spikes, cravings, and insulin, not good friends. So we don't want those. We don't want that continual up and down, because each time we're producing insulin. And also 70% of your immune function is actually located in your gut. And when you're a bit poorly, just not hugely poorly, that's a different subject, but just a little bit poorly, you'll be tireder and you want to comfort eat. So that will also affect your weight. So there's a lot that comes down to the gut. And that's why I keep mentioning it. So to recap really quickly, what your body really wants for effective weight loss is a healthy gut. And I love talking about the gut. I could talk about the gut for days. But definitely it's worth having a chat with me if you have any concerns about taking that conversation further forward about gut health. An eating well may require some habitual changes. Like you may feel like you've been eating a certain way for so long that it'd be really hard to make those changes. You know, I do get people to make those changes and they're kind of doing it through gritted teeth, thinking, how can this be healthy? How can it help me lose weight when it's so high in fat? But it does, and I can help you with that. We've mentioned about stress and how dieting can be stressful and how that can be counterproductive. And I haven't mentioned this, but this is really important. Another thing to take away, drink water, because the more hydrated you are, the more you will metabolize fat. It's a non-essential job for the body. So if we're not optimally hydrated, the body will concentrate on keeping us alive, which is very helpful. But to actually get the body to do all the things we want it to do, we need to actually help it and work with it. And one of the things is to actually make sure it's hydrated. So diets will slow down our metabolism, whereas real food will increase it. And diets can increase fat storage, whereas real foods will enable fat to be metabolized. Diets are generally short-term, even though you can be on them for years, on and off, they tend to be short-term, whereas real eating should be for life, should just be, not even think about it, should just be, this is how I eat, this just fine. I'm not even thinking it's a diet, it's just what I do. Diets can be confusing neurologically, all those weird ingredients, all those sorts of things, whereas eating real food will actually help you to balance moods properly and actually regulate your moods, so you feel awake when you need to, alert when you need to, sleepy when you need to. You know, the body is capable of doing all of that. We just artificially overstimulate it at times, and that's quite confusing. And diet foods will damage your gut flora, whereas real foods will actually boost your gut diversity, and that gut diversity is what we want to help metabolize fat. You should have some handouts. I have no idea whether you get them in email or whether you can see them now, because I've lost the chat box. So hopefully you will get them on email, and you have a top tip document, some of the things I've been talking about in here. You get the health triangle, and you also get listen to your body. So we don't listen to our body as much as we used to, and we've come out of tune with our body, but our body is very good at talking to us. The gut is very crucial and influential in that. So the handout is to basically, it's got a big list, and it's not an exhaustive list, but it's a big list of things that could be a sign that something is not right. And if your body is trying to whisper something to you with a little telltale sign that something is not right in the body, we should be able to listen to it. When we don't, it tends to start shouting at us, and eventually it will scream at us to make us listen. We don't need that. So as I say, at the end of this webinar, as a follow-up to the webinar, you will get an email with a voucher for a one-to-one with me. I don't say I'm very good at things very often, but I am very good at getting people to make changes, to get people off diets, and to get people off, you know, things that are not healthy for them, and to actually get them to make lifelong changes. And once they make them, they are a convert, and they will talk the way I do, and you know, they'll go around telling their friends not to have this, it's evil, and not to eat that, and they will become a convert, and they will go around, you know, and I'm like a little army of people going around spreading the message, because once you get it, you don't want to go back to being tricked and conned, and you know, feeling like you've got the miracle cure, it's going to do this, and then feeling it hasn't worked again. You know, that because there isn't a miracle cure. We just have to get to know our own body and what works and what doesn't. And everyone's different, which is why I have got the offer for the one-to-one at the end. And then just basically keep in touch. I will follow up with everybody. and I will go and check the chat box now. But I'm ways to keep in touch with me. I've overrun very, very slightly, so I'm sorry about that. It was meant to finish at 8. It's now just after. I will keep in touch with everybody via the email as a follow-up, and I'll check in the chat box and see if there is anything that I can help anybody with. But it was my first webinar, so please just apologies about the beginning forgetting to actually share the slides, slight mishap, and then losing the chat box. But anywho, it's all hopefully sorted, and I will speak to you soon. I'm going to end the webinar. Cheers, bye bye.